In this section we're going to create a high goal scorer table, which we're going to use to display the top goal scorers across the entire league. First off, to create the SQL that we're going to need, we're just going to select the player name, the team name, and the count of the goals that the individual member has scored. And we're going to grab that information from the goal scorer table, which is going to be inner joined to the player table. On the player ID being equal across both tables. It's also going to be joined onto the team table with an inner join. We're then going to actually group this output by the player name. In this way we're going to be able to actually count the number of goals each actual player has scored. Finally, we're going to order the output by the number of goals in descending order. And if we execute this command now, we're going to get our output, which is exactly how we intend it to be. So we're going to save this as a view, and we're going to call it goal scorers. So if I go ahead and save this, you should then be able to select everything from goal scorers and get the same output. If we move across to NetBeans now, we haven't actually got anywhere to actually save this data or to display it. And so I'm going to add a new element, a new section of our website in called player. So all I'm going to do is going to copy one of the controllers, and we're going to rename this to be player. And so we need to rename this to player. And we're going to have an index which is going to redirect to player/index. We're going to need to create a new model called player model, which we're going to need to rename the class inside it. And we're also going to need to create a new section in our views called player. And inside here we're going to copy across just an index page. In our controller we're going to need to go ahead and copy across a method similar to the one that we've used when we created the results, so that we can actually pass data between the model and the view. We're going to rename it player data though. In our model, we're going to copy across our get results data from our results model, which is going to be renamed get player data. Just going to do some quick refactoring to make it make more sense. We're not going to have as much separation in this section. We're just going to eventually have one big table output, instead of the many different sections that we've had in the fixtures and the results sections. And so a lot of this information that we have about creating arrays from arrays is actually unnecessary. And all we're going to do, instead of outputting all of this information, which obviously doesn't apply for this table, we're going to output everything from our goal scorers. And we're not going to have any conditions at the moment. So this section is much more straightforward compared to the sections that we've had in the past. So now if we go ahead and move across to our actual view, we're going to rename this section Top Goal Scorers. We're going to import our stretch goal scorer, and we're going to create this again in a minute. So all we need to do is rename this to goal scorers. Now we're not going to have a heading in this section because it's going to apply for the entire year worth of data, which are going to pass all of the results across. And because we're only going to have one section, we can also delete this for loop, because we're only going to do this once. So now let's create our new stretch goal scorers section. In our elements, we're going to create a new folder called stretch goal scorers, which is going to contain a new file. Like we'll just rename a previous one. And if we rename this to stretch goal scorers, and take out our heading attribute, we're going to keep the Polymer instantiation as well as the paper shadow, because we are going to have a paper shadow. And we can keep all of the styling as well. We're not going to have any links, however, and so we can remove them. So as I say, we can remove our heading, and our names are going to be slightly different. If we look back across to our SQL page, we have our player name, team name, and goals. And so we can just rename these player, team, goals. And you can remove these last two elements. Now we're not going to have fixtures in this case, we're going to have goal scorers. And so we can rename that everywhere else. We need to change this to stretch goal scorers. And we'll change this F into G. We can delete the links because, as I say, we're not using any links. And we have our player name, team name, and goals. If we go back to our website and navigate to player, we do have a couple of errors. And this is because we have the where statement still here. We didn't clean that section up properly. So if we try this again now, we get a different error. And we're obviously looking for results data because we haven't actually changed that to be the correct information. So in our view, we're looking for results data here, whereas this should be player. And we shouldn't have that either, we're not inside of a loop anymore. So if we retry this again, we can see that it's loading properly, but for some reason it's not actually displaying. And again, that's because we haven't changed the results to goal scorers. And finally, we also need to change the folder that this file is in, so that it actually links up correctly. And so now we have our output results. As you can see, we have our people who have scored more goals at the top, going down to people who have scored less. Now we haven't created a link on the left yet for this section, and so just so that we don't forget about it, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And to do that, all we're going to do is to go to the header and create a new line. With the player being the folder name. We could go ahead and create a unique icon for this, but because we're only using it as a reminder for later, I'm not going to put any effort into styling this properly. As I said in a previous video, we are going to come back and completely restyle the navigation so that it's much more dynamic. So over the course of the past 3 sections, we've created our results page, our fixtures page, and our top goal scorers page, which are also very useful for our team profile page, because we have upcoming fixtures, results, and a top goal scorer section on this page, as well as some basic details about the team. And so in our next page we're going to be creating this section, which is going to involve creating one more element for this actual section at the top here, as well as filtering all of the information that we've been gathering and returning so far, so that it only displays the information applicable for one specific team. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. So we have our fixtures, we have our results, and then we have our goal scorers. So the last thing we're going to do in this section is to change all of these links so that they actually link to the correct page, i.e. the profile page for the relevant team.